Canucks singing the blues after falling 4-3 to St. Louis in overtime. The home woes continue, even with the return of Thatcher Demko. Let's get into it. This is Rink Wide Vancouver. And we welcome you inside the Rink Wide Vancouver studios in downtown Vancouver on a night that sees the Vancouver Canucks fall 4-3 to the St. Louis Blues. It's Jeff and it's Irv with you here, and we've got lots to talk about. Rink Wide, a presentation of Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you open an account. St. Louis Blues come to town and look like they're going to skate away with a 3-2 victory in regulation time. You give the Canucks a little bit of credit. Some urgency late in the hockey game produces a Jake DeBrusk goal that ties things at 3. And then it got to overtime. And, didn't last too long. A minute and 40 seconds in, Dylan Holloway gets to double digits, his 10th of the season as he races away down the right side, cuts to the middle of the ice, and roofs it on Thatcher Demko. And, of course, Thatcher Demko, a big part of the storyline in this one. But so was the lack of urgency, or if this was a sleepy Tuesday night in the middle of a homestand with the not-so-sexy St. Louis Blues coming to town, but they are playing better under Jim Montgomery since their coaching change. Give the Blues credit. They did what they had to do to get a victory here. But more questions than answers yet again for this Vancouver Canucks hockey club on home ice.
Yeah, what was it? 233 days for Thatcher Demko since we got to say he was the starting goaltender for the Vancouver Canucks. He said he had to go through hell, put his knee through hell before, he came back. Well, his team gave him that.
His team put him through hell.
Exactly, in this game. His entire team should be going and offering him an apology after this one because he, again, like most nights, we talk about the goaltender being probably their best player. He's the reason why this one there wasn't way more goals.
Well, we want to hear what you have to say. Hit us up all of our social channels. You can see them there. Let's make sure that YouTube chat is hopping. I'm sure it will be. It always is. And after another Canucks loss, whether it's Thatcher Demko, whether you want to talk about the lack of urgency, the home record, some of the coaching decisions of Rick Tocchet, on a night when the Canucks could not move the puck out of their own zone. One of their few puck-moving defensemen sat and watched from the press box. That was a curious decision that we'll get to as well. But the return of Demko, Dakota Joshua's first of the season, things that should have propelled the Canucks, brought some life into the building, and it just didn't matter as the Canucks, again, fell behind. They were now 3-1 late in the second period. So when you frame it that way to get a single point, sure, all points are good points in the National Hockey League, but again, this is another middling team, a team behind the Canucks in the standings that comes into Rogers Arena and skates away with 2 points. So the Canucks fall to 14-8-4 now on the season, up to 33 points, but that home record, 4 wins in 14 games. They are 4-6-4, and halfway through this homestand, just 1-1-1. Beat Columbus, lost to Tampa, and here get to overtime before they fall to the St. Louis Blues. Joshua with his first of the year. Pettersson gets his 8th on the power play. Got a fortunate bounce off Colton Parayko after some incredible pressure by the Vancouver Canucks. And let's be honest, they were due a power play moments after Brock Besser got absolutely hosed. It may have looked like a penalty in real time, but the replay showed that Colton Parayko basically just loses his footing, goes down, and it's not the referee standing 5 feet away. He keeps his whistle in his pocket. It's the guy out at center that has to look through a bunch of bodies and sticks and whatever and decides that, had to be an infraction there. So Besser goes to the box and Kyrou scores in the power play, and you thought at 3-1, look out. This one might get away from the Canucks, and ultimately it did, but they do manage the loss. They get a single point. Still, a disappointing outcome as it only gets tougher here. You got the defending champs coming in. They're starting to roll now. Florida will be here on Thursday. Colorado to wrap up the homestand. You got Boston on Saturday, and you saw what happened to the Bruins in Winnipeg. They got absolutely slaughtered. 8-1 was the final there, but we won't worry about that game. We're focusing on a 4-3 St. Louis victory over the Canucks. Shots even at 25 apiece. Blues had the only 2 shots in overtime. Another heroic night from Quinn Hughes, but how many is too many for this guy? And are they pushing him to his limit here? This is game 27 of the season. Phil Hronik's going to be out a while still, and Quinn Hughes tapping out at 10 seconds shy of 30 minutes of ice time in this hockey game, more than half of the third period when the Canucks were down and pushing. He's trying his best, but again, the Canucks being exposed for the lack of depth on this blue line. And I don't know, do we want to get into that?
I think that's where we start.
You want to
before
go there?
The game even happened.
Because Hughes plays 29 minutes and 50 seconds, 4 shots, 13 attempts. Like he's trying to do all he can, but they're asking him to do so much in light of the absence of Filip Hronek. And so you look at he's paired with Myers again, then you had Soucy and Juleson, and tonight it was the third pairing of Vinny Desharnais, and people have been calling for Big Vinny to take a seat here after a tough weekend. Not only does Desharnais stay in, but his partner, for the most part, Erik Brannstrom, is the guy that gets healthy scratched for Mark Friedman, playing his first game since game 82 last year, when they kind of throw him a bone, got him into that game in Winnipeg to wrap up the regular season. That's the last time he played a National Hockey League game. He's been on the roster for a while here. Whatever the decision, and I hope that Rick Tocchet has asked about it in his post-game remarks here, because the Canucks have just got pinned all night long in their own zone, couldn't move the puck, couldn't generate any speed through the neutral zone because the guys that had the puck had trouble unloading it off the glass and down the ice, icings repeatedly. I don't know. Maybe Brannstrom didn't have a great weekend, but they need more of what Erik Brannstrom brings to this group, not less. And so to take him out of the lineup, a very curious decision on the part of whether it was the coaching staff or management. I mean, the buck stops with the head coach generally, but who knows where the decision comes from, whatever the case. Erik Brannstrom, one of the few puck movers they've got, he sat and watched while his teammates struggled.
Yeah, I think the decision, like you mentioned, it was very curious. I think that they wanted to get Mark Friedman a game. He'd been up here, the injury that he went through, and all of that, and being able to come back from it. But in any case, like I've talked about it, and I said this on the show always, even when talking about goaltenders, if you're the head coach of this hockey team, like you have to put your lineup out that gives you the best chance to win a hockey game. I'm sorry, Mark Friedman on that blue line does not, when you already have a depleted blue line, give your team the best chance to win, Jeff. I don't care if Erik Brannstrom had one bad game. He's your second best puck-moving defenseman after Quinn Hughes, as this defense core is currently assembled. So whether that decision, like you mentioned, was maybe it was management, maybe it was Rick Tocchet, and maybe they just tried to throw the guy a bone, and since you've been through a lot and things like that, but this is the NHL. Mark Friedman's not in the NHL for a reason. He's an American League hockey guy at best, and there's no, I'm not disrespecting Mark Friedman at all. He's made a career and things like that, but to win a hockey game when you're already down a defenseman and you have a guy that's played decently well since you've acquired him and is your second best puck moving defenseman, something that they have so much difficulty with, you don't play him is just a decision that I don't think a lot of us can wrap our heads around, and especially in our different social channels, right? Everyone's saying the Canucks can't break out. They can't make 2-foot passes. Quinn Hughes there's too much on Quinn Hughes now. So definitely the defense is kind of what lost in the game here, I think.
Right. And so if we look at that third pairing tonight, Vincent Desharnais plays 12 minutes and 33 seconds. Mark Friedman finishes the night 14:49, so Friedman actually played a fair bit more than Desharnais, and Desharnais with half a minute of penalty kill time in there as well. But the underlying numbers, guess what? Not pretty.
No.
For these guys. They play 8 minutes and 57 seconds together at 5-on-5. Shots were 4-0 in favor of the Blues. So the Canucks didn't generate a single shot on goal. Corsi was 7-2 in favor of the Blues, but the actual shots on goal were 4-0 St. Louis in almost 10 minutes of ice time with Desharnais and Friedman out there as a pair. And so, yeah, I mean, we saw it. We saw it in the second period when those guys, a couple of shifts, having all kinds of trouble, and the Blues doing their best to get their top line out there and trying to exploit matchups, and did that. So, if Brannstrom sits for a game, I'm not going to lose my mind over a depth defender being a healthy scratch once, but it better only be once.
But the thing is, what was the reason for him to come out of the lineup in the first place? I think that's the biggest thing.
Fair enough, and I think Vinny Desharnais has struggled for a while
I agree.
now, and yet they love their tall guys. Brannstrom's his biggest fault is that he's not 6'7" or whatever, and he's never going to be. But he has shown an ability to move the puck. Maybe we're missing the plot a little bit here as we talk about depth defenders. Thatcher Demko returned to game action.
Yep.
And great ovation for him when Al Murdoch did the starting lineup. Now, it was not a full house in there. And at 7 o'clock when they did the starting lineups, people I posted the introduction of Thatcher Demko, and their takeaway was more about, look at the empty seats. I mean, that's generally the case at puck drop. It fills in. But, yeah, I mean, I said earlier, it was a sleepy Tuesday night in there. There are bigger, sexier opponents. Tampa was in the other day. Florida's coming through here on Thursday. Colorado. If people are looking to spend their money on the homestand, I think you're probably looking at those games as opposed to the St. Louis Blues, who are a pretty nondescript bunch, but that's not taking anything away from them and what they're doing here. Again, the return of Thatcher Demko, you wanted to believe, was going to provide a lift for the Vancouver Canucks. They did open the scoring, just as they did the other day against Tampa. Hasn't happened often, but they've opened the scoring in back-to-back games and really have nothing to show for it, a single point from these two games. But Thatcher Demko comes back, and the numbers don't look great. 4 goals on 25 shots. Didn't love the Holloway overtime winner. Kind of looked like it got through Demko. But Thatcher Demko is probably sitting there thinking to himself, last year this team was airtight. The guts of the ice, structure and staples and everything else. 3 breakaways in the second period. There was chance after chance after chance as this night unfolded. So, this one could have got away from the Canucks quite easily.
Yeah.
If not for Thatcher Demko. The scoring chances 24-14 in favor of St. Louis at 5-on-5. High dangers 9-4. So, welcome back, Thatcher Demko. This is sort of the patchwork mess defensively that, he's been watching the games, been out on the road trip, but had a different vantage point here. He got tripped up early by erratic Faxa, and we hope Faxa's okay. He left the game in the third period and looked like he was in some real distress as he hustled down the tunnel here.
Hope he's okay.
I think all things considered for Thatcher Demko, maybe the best thing, Irf, is that this thing didn't go to a shootout. I was thinking after all this time, that's the last thing that Thatcher Demko needed was to face guys one-on-one in the skills competition in his return. There were some positives, but ultimately, for people that thought Thatcher Demko was going to ride back in on his white horse here and be the savior, not the case, and I'm not sure that there's a goalie alive that could be the savior behind this defense right now.
Well, that's just it, right? Look, we had our talk about the defense, and then let's talk about Demko now. And, I thought that, again, goaltending wasn't the issue. Maybe on the last goal, there was a little bit of, he probably should have had that, maybe a little bit of rust, but you can't blame him on the other one. And a wicked shot by Robert Thomas. No goal in the NHL stopping that one. I don't care what you say. The first one, could he have fought through the screen maybe a little bit better? Okay, that's fine. And then the other goal as well. It's just, these are things that when the defense breaks down, I don't think Thatcher Demko came into this game expecting to see what was going to happen in front of him, just his team folding. So you got to give Demko some credit here in a sense where he came back. It was 8 months off. He gets 1 game under him, and you hope that he's going to be able to move forward and move past this. But again, Jeff, as much as we can sit here and talk about this was Demko's night and the ovation and everything, there is so much with this defense that is wrong, and that is all anybody wants to talk about right now. But even the forward group, they came back and they clawed their way back into it, but why do they have to claw their way back? You're up 1-0 at home. The third period, what was it? We talked about this before. 2 shots on net?
Well, halfway through the period, they're down a goal. And we always talk about score effects, and you're the home team, and these are the St. Louis Blues at the end of a road trip. When Max Sasson had that glorious opportunity set up by Danton Heinen, that was the Canucks' first shot of the period after they had a power play. So they finished with 8 shots because they applied some late pressure, and ultimately they get the tying goal. And again, we'll give them small C credit for that much at least. Pettersson made a nice play to find DeBrusk in front. And look, we've been on Jake for not scoring at home. Well, he scored at home in 2 of the last 3. So it's starting to come for him, up to 13 now to lead the team. But leaving it way too late again. There wasn't a comeback in the offing against Tampa. They had to scrap and claw to come back against Columbus to open this homestand. So it's becoming sort of a constant theme here for the Vancouver Canucks. And this was a team that was so good as a front runner last year. And ultimately, maybe we just have to park all the talk about last year. Last year was last year. things broke their way. This is a different group, obviously, and they're going about things the hard way here. And yeah, I mean, they made life difficult on Thatcher Demko. When I look at my notes, in the second period alone, Jordan Kyrou had a breakaway, and then moments later it was Dylan Holloway in on a breakaway. There were all sorts of chances, and Thatcher Demko was forced to make some great A's, but ultimately couldn't stop them all. We talked about the 2 shots in overtime. Philip Broberg down the left wing. That was the first shot of overtime, and then Holloway wins it at 140, set up by Robert Thomas. And that leads us into our 3 stars from this hockey game. So the 3 stars, as selected by the broadcast crew in the building: Robert Thomas, Connor Garland, and Dylan Holloway. I think Garland is excluded, and certainly he is on ours. Like, he coughs up that puck on the shorthanded goal. Like, I know he had a couple of assists. Love the play that he made to get around Ryan Suter. Scooted around Suter, sets up Dakota Joshua for his first of the year. Canucks get the lead, and you're thinking, hey, that's the start you're looking for, and then flush it a minute and 13 later when Bolduc scored. So Garland did have a 2-point night, but he doesn't figure in our 3 stars because we're taking that defensive play on the power play into account. Robert Thomas with a goal and 2 assists. He's in on 3 of the 4 St. Louis goals. Was out for a dozen games with an ankle injury, but he's back. And now better than a point-a-game guy.
Yeah.
And, he's dangerous. And the times I've seen him against the Canucks, like, this guy can shoot the puck, and you saw it again on that breakaway. Like, he made no mistake, knew what he wanted to do, and snapped it past Thatcher Demko. Dylan Holloway is the 2nd star. Lost in Edmonton. Did score there the other night, but I'm sure he was glad to have that return to Edmonton over. This was the end of the line, the road trip, and puts a cap on it. They won in overtime in Calgary the other night. Controversial fashion. No controversy here. Dylan Holloway with a goal, an assist, 5 shots on goal as well. So he was busy and involved. And Elias Pettersson gets the bounce off Parayko for his 8th of the season. But I like the play that he made to Jake DeBrusk to set up the tying goal. Again, you'd like to see a complete effort, start to finish. Was awfully quiet against Tampa the other day. You know, 2 points, that's good, but still not the best player on the ice. One of the better Canucks, but just in terms of, you know, you're still waiting for that no-doubter, right? Like, where there's no question that who's the best player on the ice tonight? Oh, Elias Pettersson. I'm not sure a third of the way through the season that we've had a night where you walk away from that. But he does have 2 points and 5 shots and played a lot, 23-15, almost his season high. Not quite, but within seconds of being a season high. So there you go. Those are the 3 stars here on Rink Wide Vancouver. The representation of Greta Bar. And you've heard us talking about Greta, but have you checked it out for yourself? What are you waiting for? It's a great atmosphere. All the big screens. You've got the arcade games, terrific new street food menu, weekly drink specials, talk of a Canucks Army watch party coming up early in the new year, so stay tuned for some details on that. Greta Bar is the place to be. 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar. Let the games begin. It was nice to see Dakota Joshua score. We've been wondering a little bit. I tried to talk to him on Saturday at practice just about his return, not so much about the struggles, but he shut me down. He didn't want to talk about much of anything, which told me that he was a little frustrated, obviously, but go to the net, stick on the ice, and Connor Garland, the way that he's playing this season, he's going to find you. And he did just that. Hard rim around the boards by Tyler Myers and great transition. I mean, Canucks had the puck in their own zone, and boom, before you knew it, they were off to the races. I said Garland got around Ryan Suter.
What was Suter doing?
Well, did he hop off the bench? And I think he was maybe worried that he had jumped too soon. Like, he was standing still, the old statue, and Garland gets around him on the outside, and then perfect pass on the stick of Joshua. And let's hope that gets him going, because 13 games back now, finally has a goal. And so we've been talking about some of the depth guys on this team and guys that haven't been able to contribute. He was one of them. And again, I think people are willing to be patient. Hoglander and Danton Heinen, patience running a little thin, perhaps. But
I do think Hoglander did have a good shift. I'll just leave it at, he had a couple good shifts in this hockey game.
In the second period there, where he got away from Kessel, and I thought there could have been a penalty in there.
I thought he was going to draw one there as well.
But I actually thought some of his best work was after the initial rush. He stuck with it on the end boards. There was some of that dogged determination that you want to see from Nils Hoglander, but it's another night that goes by the wayside here where just not a whole lot happening for him. Not a shot on goal, just the one shot attempt, no hits, just under 11 minutes of ice time, and so it's up to 22 games now for Nils Hoglander without a goal. And Danton Heinen did make a nice play to Max Sasson. Sasson had the breakaway the other day against Tampa. Maybe it's coming. You hope. Third time the charm if he gets another grade A opportunity like that one. But, it's awfully quiet around Danton Heinen. Now he's playing in a fourth-line role with guys that are essentially AHLers trying to prove themselves in the National Hockey League. But 11 minutes of ice time, no shot attempts for Danton Heinen, a couple of hits. And so it's just gone ice cold for him as well.
Yeah, Freddie saying, thought Dak's goal ignite a great game. Guess not. Look, it was tough, right? I think that for Dakota Joshua, getting the goal, Garland went and got the puck after. I'm sure he's going to get that as well. But, the guy's been through a lot. So you hope that he can use this as momentum. But after that in the game, Jeff, we really didn't see him much. I know he had 4 shots on net. But in all reality, like other than the first one and the goal, didn't look too dangerous. The bottom 6 forward group, it's just a mishmash of guys that are just average, right? And I think as a whole, you have to look at this team, and there's so much expectation for it of what they accomplished last season. And I know JT Miller's not in the lineup. You haven't had Demko, but this is an average hockey team right now by the way they play. They've beat up on opponents that are inferior to them. They can't beat really, really, really good teams that are bound for the playoffs. And you're getting great goaltending from Lankin and had pretty good goaltending here from Demko tonight. But your best player every single night can't be Quinn Hughes, because it's going to get to a point where 29, 40, 29, 50, 30 minutes a night, game 50, game 55 in the season, the guy's going to run out of gas at some point.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's absolutely a real fear. And Phil Hronek's going to be out probably till early February. And so you think about that. They've got 3 more games on the homestand. They've got 7 games between now and Christmas, and then a little bit of break. But we touched on it on Sunday as well. Like for Quinn Hughes, he's going to the Four Nations. He's going to probably lead that tournament in ice time, right? So where it's a break for others, there's no break coming for Quinn Hughes. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they handle him in terms of practice days and maintenance days. I know they kept him off the ice late last week, and I think that's going to have to be a regular thing when it comes to the captain, because you're right. You just can't keep running this guy out there the way that they are, and just the way that they're deploying their defense right now. Like Tyler Myers playing with Quinn 22 and a half minutes, and Myers is holding his own. I thought he had a nice afternoon the other day against Tampa, but at this stage of his career, as he approaches his 35th birthday, do you want Tyler Myers playing 22 and a half minutes? Like it's too much for Quinn. It's probably too much for Tyler Myers. Carson Soucy, he played 20 minutes and 23 seconds, but then we know that there's a considerable drop-off after that, and you've got Noah Juleson right now as basically one of your top 4 defensemen. The
defensive depth of this team has been questioned for the last 3 years. Yep. Right? And you look at it and they haven't really addressed it. Okay, you get Zadorov and then he leaves. But other than that, the need was to go and try and get a defenseman in the offseason that helps you with A, moving the puck out of your own end, which they can't do right now. And B, just be able to have that stability. Okay, Carson Soucy had his troubles. In his defense, he is starting to trend in the right direction a little bit. I know it was a tough one tonight. But it's a glaring need. It's something that needs to be addressed. Every other team in the National Hockey League knows. Every single person watching the Vancouver Canucks knows how much of a fire drill their defense is right now at this point. And it's tough, right? You go down in games, you get pinned in your own end. Fast forwards, good teams with really good forechecks are going to pin that defense down, and they can't get out of their own end. And Eric Brandstrom's pretty good at it on his own, but you still need more. And right now, they're not getting it.
I think Carson Soucy's had a little bit of a renaissance of late. I thought this was a tough night for him. Yeah. First period, Braden Shen dances around him, cuts hard to the net, hits the post. He had Demko down and out, hit the post. Soucy takes a cross-checking penalty in the second period. Was that the one that they scored on the power play? I think it may have. No, Besser was the one. So moments before the Besser penalty, Soucy had taken a cross-checking penalty. And then, not his fault, but again, when speak of the depth, the no Hronek, Carson Soucy becomes the second defenseman out in overtime, and he's out there. DeBrusk was a little slow on the back check. He came off. Weird deployment in overtime as well. Again, Quinn can't stay out for 5 minutes. No. But Quinn plays the first minute and 10 seconds. They have a face-off.
Lose the draw.
They make a change. Elias Pettersson barely played in overtime because they started with Garland and Suter. Garland got off. Suter stayed out there. And then Petey had one quick shift in overtime. And then the defensive zone faceoff, so they put Teddy Bluger, and you hope that was just going to be for the defensive zone faceoff, but then Bluger stays out with Brock Besser, and as they switch things up, Jake DeBrusk came on the ice. Ultimately, the 3 Canucks skaters on the ice were Besser, Soucy, and DeBrusk, and Dylan Holloway wins it a minute and 40 seconds in. But, for all the ice time that Quinn had, and who knows how much he had left in his tank, but you want Quinn Hughes in overtime. He had one shift.
Yeah.
One shift in overtime. And
they spent skating around chasing guys.
Yeah.
Because he didn't win the face-off. He didn't get the puck.
No, and so Canucks lose for the third time in 3-on-3 overtime, and they lost a shootout to the Philadelphia Flyers as well. So it's their 4th loser point of the season, again, 14-8-4.
Where are you at with their record on home ice? How much of a concern is it now? It's huge, and I'll tell you why. Because the road, and I wrote about this at Canucks Army. There's a column up there. I wrote it yesterday, and it still applies because they didn't win. There's a bunch of things that concern me. They're the 2nd lowest team in the National Hockey League in terms of shots on goal at home. So it's very, it feels on too many nights like we're back in the playoffs where they just refuse to shoot the puck. They don't generate much. 25 shots in this hockey game, with a bunch of them coming late because they were in the high teens for a while there in the third period. So they're not generating much at one end. Only Colorado allows more goals at home this season than the Vancouver Canucks. Are 31st in the National Hockey League. And Colorado doesn't have a goalie. Well, now they do.
But the Canucks, Artie Silovs gave up 6 against Calgary and Jersey, and that factors into it. But Kevin Lankinen only has 3 wins on home ice. Thatcher Demko doesn't have a win now in his one appearance. I'm not going to knock the record, but he ends up giving up 4. They give up 4 on the regular. They gave up 4 to Tampa the other day, including the empty netter. The game against Columbus stands as the outlier because they didn't give up 4 there. But I was surprised to see that only Colorado has given up more goals on home ice than the Vancouver Canucks. One of the things that really surprises me is the Canucks last season were so good at getting a lead and extending it and putting other teams on their heels. And when you have a 2-0 lead, you've built in a little cushion there that, okay, if the other team gets one, you're still in the lead. They're still chasing and they're still having to adjust and adapt, and maybe they have to shorten their bench and all those types of things. The Canucks have had one 2-0 lead on home ice all season. Open the scoring here. Open the scoring against Tampa. They're not able to extend. And so the only 2-0 lead the Canucks have had on home ice actually was a 3-0 lead on opening it against Calgary, and it didn't mean anything because they ended up losing that hockey game too. But it's wild to me that this team, and is that a product of the system? Are they sitting back when they get up 1-0? Like here tonight, it was a minute and 13 seconds later, and St. Louis tied it. So, yeah, I mean, great. They got the 1-0 lead, but they're just doing nothing to run away and hide from opponents when on those rare nights that they do open the scoring, it kind of feels like they're getting fat and happy with the one, hey, we got the lead, and then before you know it, they're back on even terms, and here before the end of the first period, they were down by a score of 2-1. So, the road record is the only reason that they're still above the playoff bar. And the home record is the reason that they haven't been able to distance themselves from teams like the St. Louis Blues and the Calgary Flames. And so the longer this goes, they're not going to play at an 800 clip on the road. They're just not. And so good on them for putting all the points that they have in the bank on the road, but they're going to have to go and play some really good teams, and they're going to lose some games on the road. That's just a fact of the matter. And so to offset that, you have to find a way to start putting points in the bank on home ice, and that's 4 wins in 14. That's a third of the home ice schedule that they basically have flushed.
Yeah, it's something that's going to need to be addressed, but we keep sitting here and we keep talking about it every single time. What's the issue with them on home ice? Is it the start? Is it who knows what it is? But there's another thing I wanted to get to as well. They talked about wanting to be a team that plays fast, plays on the rush, and does those things, and offense from defense. In the offseason, they went and signed Vinny Desharnais and Derek Forbort. I'm sorry, those two guys don't do that. Canucks had a first-hand look at Vinny Desharnais in Edmonton. Derek Forbort's not that good either. Made a career, obviously, has had some tough injury luck and things like that. But it's a glaring need, and it's the defense. And again, when they're not great and Quinn Hughes is as good as he is, it's going to cost you. So many people in our chat are definitely talking about that. Steve says, it's bad when scratching Brandstrom is such a big problem for this team, but it's true, right? I mean, he's a guy that, as another quote unquote puck moving defenseman, and can at least help you get out of your own end, right?
And also, not that he has a ton of points, but he's their third highest scoring defenseman. Say what you will, facts are the facts. Hronek's injured, and so they were without two of their three highest scoring defensemen by choice, by a coach's decision. I think Myers may have caught Brandstrom with the assist tonight, but again, it's just very curious. But the point is that they don't get much from the back end, and Brandstrom at least represents the idea of a little bit of offense from the blue line just not happening for the rest of those guys, and as a result, the Canucks come up a goal short against the St. Louis Blues. I want to get to the stat that stands out, because we spent a fair bit of time talking about Quinn Hughes. You've heard the numbers, 29 minutes and 50 seconds of ice time, but the stat that stands out to me is the way that he gets to 29 minutes and 50 seconds, 13 shifts over a minute in this hockey game. And you think about it, you hear coaches all the time about 35, 40-second shifts, get on, get off, and let somebody else get out there with fresh legs. And Quinn Hughes had 13 shifts over a minute. Two of them were over 2 minutes. He played the entire first power play of the hockey game, and I think was out there for all of one of the other power plays plus. 2 minutes and 39 seconds was his longest shift of the hockey game. Again, this is a supremely conditioned athlete, but he's playing with the bubble. So you wonder how much that impacted him and affected him. Still controlling this hockey game, doing the things that he does. But, everybody's got a limit, and you just wonder if he's close to it. Are they getting the best out of Quinn Hughes? Would a little less be even more when it comes to the captain being effective? Whatever the case, that was the workload tonight. And 29 minutes and 50 seconds, the one shift in overtime, and the Canucks fall by a score of 4-3.
Yeah, I think I want to piggyback off that. Dmitry Filipovich put something on X, just kind of to upping our point on Quinn Hughes and his numbers. So 29-50 of ice time, 49 shot attempts, 21 shots on goal, 6 high danger chances, say that fast, and 3 goals with him on the ice. Not on the ice, not very good. The Vancouver Canucks. Yeah, that's as a team, not on the ice. This is on with just him. So, again, he's the most important player to their team. MVP, Norris, what have you. But it just can't all be on him every single night. I do believe that we have Thatcher Demko now ready to go. Is that right, Jacob? Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so we can hear from the Canucks starting goaltender after, not playing for 8 months.
Felt rusty for sure. Obviously, it's frustrating losing. I thought I could have played a couple goals differently. So, I'm sure that there's stuff that I can pull to, keep building. But obviously, it's frustrating right now.
What about just the leg and injury and stuff?
Good. Yeah, it's good.
Did it feel strange getting ready today?
Yeah, a little bit. It kind of felt like a whirlwind of a day. I think part of it is just trying to remember your routines and, I've talked about managing expectations and not putting too much weight on that first game back. But obviously as the moment builds, you're excited to play and you want to perform. So, definitely a little bit of a weird day, just getting back into the rhythm of things. And, obviously you have a couple more games here to keep building that up.
How much of that is mental, going through all the routines and managing expectations, all of that? How much of that is a mental game?
I think it's all of it. There's only so much you can do physically. I feel like I've done just about all that stuff. So, a part of the, getting back into it is just warming up the mentals again and, going through the mindset of a game day and getting ready to play.
How fast were things moving?
Fast. For sure. I thought I felt better, as the game kind of went along. It's just, the speed of things and, traffic in front of you is tough. And, those are all just in-game reads that I think will get sharper over time.
Yeah, full stretch save in the third period on Holloway. Those are the plays that I'm sure you wanted to test yourself on. Just can you take us through that one?
That one doesn't really have anything to do with the knee or anything. In that moment, you're just trying to make a save. So, luckily, I'm long enough to cover that side of the net on that one.
You talked about putting your knee through hell. Was there a barrier to get to where you were confident, where you weren't even thinking about it anymore?
Yeah, I mean, obviously. I mean, I was out for a long time. You know, you have anxiety about things like that, and you know, admittedly, there's a couple times during the game where I'm thinking about it a little bit, just to, you know, kind of work through those things. And you know, again, that's just part of the mentality of a game day, and just building that confidence back up.
Do you think this is the hardest game? Should it get a little easier to adjust from here?
I mean, I can't speak to what these games upcoming will look like, but you know, as far as like my reads and stuff goes, yeah, I mean, I'd like to think so. There's a couple things I thought, you know, I can clean up that shouldn't take too much time. You know, just different reads and different ideas positionally, things like that. So, like I said, I'm frustrated losing the game. I thought, you know, I want to make a couple of those saves. So, but yeah, there's some things I can build off.
There you go. Thatcher Demko, you know, hopefully doesn't beat himself up too much. Doesn't sound like he's going to there. Talked about the speed of the game and sort of reacted that, yeah, practices are one thing. He's talked about that as well. But, you know, it's all those scramble plays, the uncontrolled stuff, power plays, things that you can practice. But when you're playing for keeps, everything gets ratcheted up. So said there were a few there that thinks he probably could have and should have played differently. But he'll play those through his mind, warming up his mentals, as he said. And I guess the question now is, you know, when do we see him next? Like, is it Saturday against Boston? Does Lankinen get a run here? They're probably going to split the two games. You'd think they'd split the two games out on the road in Utah and Vegas. Do we see him before the game in Utah? Do you think he gets another game on the homestand?
I think he gets one of the next two, for sure. And I don't know if it's the next one. I think the biggest thing that we're going to have to see here is, just like he said, kind of, you know, didn't want to talk about the knee, obviously, you could tell. But I think the biggest thing, Jeff, is how is he going to feel tomorrow, right? Yep. What is he going to wake up and feel like? You know, he put his knee through hell. This was it. This was the game to definitely test it. You know, all sorts of things going on. But I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me was mentally just kind of getting ready for the game and being prepared in your head. And he said that, you know, they're even at times in this game, it's hard not to think about it, of what's going on, and is your knee going to last the whole game, or is something going to happen? So I think that's pretty interesting to hear from a guy who really doesn't give too much when he does speak. So different to hear that side of it as well. But happy to see him back for the Vancouver Canucks' sake. He wasn't the reason they lost this hockey game here tonight against the St. Louis Blues, but I do think that we're going to see him one of the next two games.
I'm glad you brought up, like, so he gets through this game unscathed.
Yeah.
That part's great. I mean, the last time we saw him, he didn't return and was done for the playoffs. So getting through the night, that was a milestone or a milepost or benchmark, whatever you want to call it. But you're right. Now we see, how does his body feel and react and respond? Is he back at practice? Is he ready to go at practice tomorrow? Does he have to, you know, take a day? And hopefully not. Like, hopefully he's back and back for good now. But just getting in and playing one game, like, I don't think he's out of the woods, and I don't think he'd say that he was out of the woods here. So, yeah, we'll see what the morning brings, and then ultimately what the schedule looks like. I have to think that Lankinen gets back in there on Thursday against the defending Stanley Cup champs, but after that, the Canucks want to believe that they've got two goaltenders here that are, you know, it's going to be an absolute benefit for them and give them a tandem that they believe in and can lean on. We'll see how things work out from here. Canucks get a single point on a night when Los Angeles Kings win, the Edmonton Oilers win, the Calgary Flames win. This is the danger of not taking care of business on home ice. Seattle lost in a shootout to the Florida Panthers. Panthers starting a Western road trip, so they were down in the Emerald City and they win by a score of 2-1. Not a whole lot going on there, but you know, just to bring you up to speed, if you haven't checked the standings lately, like, the Vancouver Canucks they're holding on to the final wild card spot in the West. They're tied with Calgary in points. They do have 2 games in hand on the Flames. But imagine at the outset of the season, 27 games in, thinking that the Canucks and the Calgary Flames were going to be in a dead heat. I have to think that over the balance of a schedule that the Vancouver Canucks are going to finish ahead of the Calgary Flames. I want to believe that they're going to finish ahead of the Calgary Flames. But when you talked about the home ice problems, of all the teams in the National Hockey League on both sides, East and West, the Canucks have the fewest home ice wins by far of any of the. In fact, the Canucks have the fewest home ice wins in the National Hockey League. The next closest playoff team right now has 7 home ice wins. So it gives you a sense of how good the Canucks have been on the road, but also the sort of gap here. And the more they spin their wheels at home, the more it's going to give teams behind them. Like they're 3 points ahead of both St. Louis and the Seattle Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they've got games in hand, but if you're barely a 500 hockey club having games in hand, you're not going to win everything and take every point available to you. So the Canucks have work to do. And it is hard to figure out, but they're 14 games into this. Like the coaching staff has to figure out a way for this group to get results, to grind out results on home ice. They've been close. They've been in games. They get loser points, but ultimately they have 4 wins in 14 games. That's not good enough, anywhere close to good enough in front of the paying customer. I want to ask you a little bit about Brock Besser. We talked about the penalty that he was given, and it was a bad call. And it does make you wonder, is there not some sort of process that the on-ice officials, the war room, could put their heads together? And, we were talking about it here as we watched. In football, sometimes they'll pick up a flag and just say no penalty on the play. In
the NBA, the refs always get together. Sometimes they take away fouls and what have you. And the umps, obviously.
Sometimes it's not a penalty.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a penalty here, and it looked like it was going to be costly. So, again, credit to the Canucks for not letting that sink them. Fragile bunch on home ice, you could have understood in some ways if the game had got away from them at that point. But I want to talk about Brock Besser because Pettersson scores, DeBrusk scores. So that line generates. Besser gets a couple of assists, and that part's great. But he's not the same player since coming back from the concussion. He's not. He scored against Columbus, and that part was good. 1 goal in 8, and he was off to such a good start. He had 6 goals in 12 games, and then Tanner Jeannot picks him on the chin, and it's been a struggle for Brock coming back here. There have been some moments, but in terms of being the goal scorer, 1 goal in 8. And another game here, a tight game, a close game where they could have used some offense from one of the guys that they look to score goals. Hopefully getting JT Miller back will sort of bring back Brock Besser as well, but 1 goal in 8, he's a better goal scorer, better player than that.
Absolutely. Getting himself into shooting positions. JT Miller definitely helps with that. JT takes so much of the attention from opposing teams' best, defensemen. That's why Brock gets open. He finds himself in shooting lanes and things like that, but he's not, he's not doing it right now. I didn't like the behind the back pass in overtime. I really didn't like that from Brock. I think Brock, he's a veteran now in the National Hockey League. He should know better than to make a play like that. Didn't like that at all. But, I think that you hope when if JT Miller is going to come back here at some point over the next week or so, it's going to get better for Brock Besser. But I agree with you, Jeff. I think we need to see a lot more offense from number 6 in a contract year.
Yeah, 2 shots on goal. He had 7 shot attempts. It didn't feel like a 7-shot attempt game to me. Watching him there in the building, and yeah, just didn't look dangerous in the moments that he did. He had the one chance in the power play where he hit the side of the net. Bit of a close call. Off the top of my head, that's about all I can really recall in terms of. I looked through my notes here. I don't have a whole lot written down for Brock other than the penalty that he didn't deserve. But unfortunately had to serve regardless. 4-3, the Blues beat the Vancouver Canucks. It's Rink Wide Vancouver. Keep those comments coming into the Great Clips inbox. We want your feedback. Want to incorporate as much as we can into the program. More than 4,400 hair salons throughout the United States and Canada. Great Clips, the world's largest hair salon brand and the official hair salon of the NHL. Your time's valuable. Use the Great Clips check-in app, see the wait time, check in on your phone, and then get your haircut when you want. For more info, check out greatclips.com. Great Clips. It's going to be great. We'll preview what's next for the Vancouver Canucks. A visit from the Stanley Cup champs, a team that they beat in overtime with JT Miller scoring the game winner back in early October. But before we do that, got to look around the National Hockey League. We kind of ran through some of the games that impact the Vancouver Canucks, Pacific Division games. Busy night. I know you're keeping an eye on the scoreboard for tomorrow as well, which leads us into our Bet365 line of the night.
Yes, absolutely. As this portion of the show is brought to you by Bet365. Proud partner of Sekeres and Price. Canucks Conversation, Jeff, you and I here at Rink Wide Vancouver. Open an account with Bet365 today, but on a huge range of markets. Use code NATION. Whatever the moment, never ordinary at Bet365. Only 2 games on the schedule tomorrow night in the National Hockey League. And I do like the Ottawa Senators at home against the Anaheim Ducks because I think the Ducks stink.
Buffalo.
And the Buffalo
Rangers.
Sabres and the Rangers. The Rangers are just getting their teeth kicked in.
Can they cancel that game?
Yeah, there's just 2 bad teams. They're getting their teeth kicked in every which way. But yeah, it's one of those things where you look at it and say, okay, there's a little bit of value there. You mentioned the Canucks and coming back and JT Miller. We got a super chat.
I saw that.
Chat. Yeah,
Ring the bell.
Yarrow 96.
Yeah.
When is Miller returning? 43 needs help. We need to win at home. It was a brutal loss, but we've got to perform better. Let's go, Vancouver. Thank you for that. Yarrow _96. The belief is Miller's going to practice with the team tomorrow. I assume address the media.
I saw with my own 2 eyes.
Yeah, you
this
saw that.
morning.
You put it out there on X. Yeah.
Yeah, he was there at the morning skate. Surprised. I was there watching. All of a sudden, out comes, hey, that's JT out there. Wasn't made available to the media, but we believe that he's going to talk. I don't know how much he's going to be willing to share, but he's supposed to have a full practice with the Canucks. So where does he slot in? Who are his wingers? Is it Besser and Suter? What does that mean for Elias Pettersson? He'll stay with Jake DeBrusk, but who's going to play the wing? Is it Höglander? Is it Sherwood? What do you do? Does Connor Garland get promoted to play on that line? So there are lots of questions. I mean, they'll be delighted to have JT Miller back. Obviously, Thatcher Demko got a huge ovation. I can only imagine the roar in that first game, whether it's Thursday, maybe it's not till Saturday. JT's been off for 3 weeks here. I don't know how much he's been skating, what kind of condition. It's one thing to, ride the bike or hit the treadmill. It's another to be in NHL game shape. So
just ask Thatcher Demko.
Yeah, goaltender slightly different. But whatever the case, it was just good to see JT back, and I am curious to see how sort of willing he is to pull back the curtain and let us in on some of the things that he's been through and where he is in terms of his mental health and all those types of things. So hopefully we'll find out. Now, I do want to say, if you're wondering, what's a super chat?
Yes.
Well, you can get in and ensure that your contribution to our program is read. Now, it comes with a fee, a small fee, but it's for a great cause. We've partnered with the BC Mental Health Foundation, and proceeds from the super chat on our YouTube live chat, it goes to the BC Mental Health Foundation. So if you got something that you want to get off your chest, hit us up with a super chat, and you'll be sure. We'll be sure to read your comment, but you'll be doing a good deed as well, contributing to the BC Mental Health Foundation. So thanks to, Yarrow _96?
Yes.
Yeah. And let's see what tomorrow brings in terms of JT Miller returning to the Vancouver Canucks fold. Now, we said this, that as we start to wind things down after the 4-3 loss to the Blues, this is now the bounce-back game, and they find themselves having too many of those, quite frankly, this season. Oh, yeah, it's the Stanley Cup champs who come in 6-0-1 in their last 7 hockey games. Started the road trip in Seattle with a shootout win. They've got 38 points, so they have clawed their way back among the league leaders in the National Hockey League. 13-6-1 in their last 20. And I know it was a low-scoring game down at Climate Pledge, but they have scored in bunches here in the last 3 of their last 7 games. They've had 7 goals, 6 goals, 6 goals. And, of course, when you got Sam Reinhart, he's at 19. So one off the league lead. Leon Draisaitl got to on December the 10th. Draisaitl got to 20.
On an own goal, but yeah, he did get to 20.
And they all count. Got to 20. But Sam Reinhart having another incredible season, backing up last year, doing it again. He's up to 19 goals. Kachuk and Barkov were out of the lineup when the Canucks saw them in October. They're back, and both well over a point a game. So they're doing their thing. Sam Bennett with 13 goals already. I mean, they won the Cup. They are a deep team, well-coached team with Paul Maurice there. The power play, 4th best in the National Hockey League. I think they're the 3rd highest scoring team, or at least they headed into action tonight. 3rd highest scoring team in the NHL, had 52 shots against San Jose the other night. So these are the challenges that the Vancouver Canucks are going to face on Thursday.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm just even looking ahead. Like, it's a huge week for the Canucks. Panthers Thursday. The Bruins, as much as they stink, it's always exciting to see the Bruins
on a
Saturday night. Boston in town. Zadorov and Lindholm, money on the board game. The Colorado Avalanche on Monday. Utah, who's been playing well. You mentioned
Nate had 5 tonight.
Yeah.
5
So
points
did
in
Rantanen.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So,
and then the Utah Hockey Club, and then the Vegas Golden Knights.
yeah, Vegas on the back end of back-to-backs.
Yeah.
That is going to be difficult.
It's a big week.
And that's why we say, like, they got to find ways to squirrel away some points here on home ice, and yet Florida's going to be difficult. Colorado's starting to figure it out, and, now Colorado getting some goaltending. Like, look out. All of a sudden, the Avs may take flight here. So, a noon practice on Wednesday for the Vancouver Canucks. All eyes on JT Miller, and certainly that will be the storyline for this hockey club, and we'll see what impact that has in the way of lineup decisions, and also what do we see on the back end? Derek Forbort is getting closer. Is he an option? Do he and Brandstrom replace Desharnais and Friedman? Like, is it as simple as a complete swap of your bottom pair? Again, we're talking about bottom pairs here. So is it going to make a huge difference? I still think Brandstrom ought to be in there. I hope that it's just a one-game situation for him. Learn what you can. Try to be better for the coaching staff, I suppose. But again, he's not going to grow overnight. He is what he is, and what he brings is an ability to move the puck and transition it. And it was abundantly clear that the Canucks were in short supply of that as well. We're not going to have time to run the coach's comments here post-game, but apparently Rick Tocchet with some pointed remarks. Didn't want to talk about Elias Pettersson again, even though Petey had a goal and an assist. Said too many questions about Elias Pettersson in this market. So shut that one down, and we shall see what happened. And apparently the captain, 2 straight games now that we haven't heard from the captain. Like, nobody knows the extent of the damage behind that fishbowl.
That's why he doesn't want to show it off.
Well, whatever. I'm curious, but he wasn't available after the morning skate. He was getting treatment the other day, and apparently wasn't available tonight as well. So maybe practice day. We'll find out. I mean, again, clearly it doesn't limit him a ton, but you know that he'd prefer to shed the face mask and just get back there with the visor. So. Again, lots of moving parts here around this hockey club. See how Thatcher Demko comes through. Game number 1. On that level alone, this night represents a victory in the fact that the Canucks starting goaltender, after 8 months away, returned to game action, made some big stops, but as he himself said, would have liked to win. So he's a competitor, you know that, and you just hope that it gets sort of better from here. And now he has a baseline to work with, and we shall see how it all plays out. For Thatcher Demko and the Vancouver Canucks, but I would expect Kevin Lankinen back in goal on Thursday.
Yep, I agree. But I do think you're going to see Demko one of these next 2.
Yeah?
Yeah.
No, I tend to agree. I don't think you want to, work that hard to get back and then sit for too long. But, with, what did we say, 8 games to go before Christmas, if it's a 5-3 split or something, I still think Lankinen is the guy
gets the brunt of it.
Yeah, in the short term here. And then after Christmas, maybe you move to more of a job share and continue, just constantly monitoring Thatcher Demko and making sure that knee is all right and holding up. And, at some point, I don't know when it'll be, but at some point you're going to get consecutive starts. It may still be a month or 6 weeks or whatever, but, there'll come a point where it is his net and they turn to him, and that'll be another test for him. But on this night, they opened the scoring. That wasn't enough. They got Demko back. That wasn't enough. Joshua with his first of the year. That wasn't enough. They scored a power play goal. Again, come up a goal short. Dylan Holloway wins it in overtime. Minute and 40 seconds in. His 10th of the year. DeBrusk, Pettersson, and Joshua the goal scorers for the Vancouver Canucks. All right, make sure that you check out Canucks Army. Quad says his instant reaction up, and always great feedback to that column. I saw Wyatt along press row, so he'll have the stanchions for you, or the stanchies for you, the statsies in the morning, as well as statistical analysis and breakdown of the way that this hockey game unfolded, and whatever else is news in the Canucks orbit, it'll be there at Canucks Army. We got you back on Thursday?
Absolutely.
All right. Jacob working hard behind the scenes as well, so Dream Team will be back to do it again on Thursday night when the champs are in town. But that's going to do it for this one. 4-3. The St. Louis Blues in overtime. They defeat the Vancouver Canucks, who are now 14-8-4 on the season. For Irf and Jacob, I'm Jeff. Thanks so much for checking out another edition of Rink Wide Vancouver.